Hello. My name is Margaret, and I'm 58 years old. What I'm about to tell you is a story about love, betrayal, and the moment I learned that sometimes the people we raise can become complete strangers to us. It was supposed to be the happiest day of my life. Not my own wedding. That was beautiful, but simple. No, this day was supposed to be about my son, James. My only child. The boy I raised alone after my husband David passed away when James was just 7 years old. I had been counting down the days. 365 of them. I marked them on the calendar in my kitchen, right next to the coffee maker where I start every morning. Each day I crossed off felt like we were getting closer to something magical. Something I had dreamed about since the day James first brought Catherine home to meet me. The venue was stunning. We had chosen it together months ago, when James first told me he was going to propose to Catherine. It was a historic mansion with gardens that looked like they belonged in a fairy tale. Gardens where I had already imagined seeing my grandchildren play someday. Where I pictured James and Catherine renewing their vows on their 50th anniversary, surrounded by family. I had paid for those gardens, by the way. $15,000. But that's not what mattered to me. What mattered was that James was happy. The day arrived on a Saturday in June. I woke up at 5 in the morning, unable to sleep from excitement and nerves. My hands trembled as I made my coffee. I had taken special care with my appearance. I wore a lavender dress. The color James always said brought out my eyes. The color David told me made me look like I was glowing. I had it tailored specially at a boutique in the city, spending more than I'd ever spent on a dress in my life. My hair was done in soft waves by a stylist who came to my house at 7 in the morning. I wore the pearl necklace David had given me on our 10th anniversary, the one I saved for only the most important moments. James's high school graduation, his college graduation, and now this. I arrived at the venue an hour early. The morning air was sweet with the scent of roses and jasmine. The florists were still arranging the last bouquets. Hundreds of white peonies and garden roses, Catherine's favorites. The caterers were setting up the tables with white linens, gold-rimmed china, crystal glasses that caught the sunlight. Everything was perfect. Everything was exactly as we had planned it during those monthly meetings where Catherine would show me Pinterest boards, and I would nod enthusiastically at every single idea. I had helped with so much of this wedding. The invitations. I addressed every single one by hand, all 200 of them, because Catherine wanted that personal touch. The favors. I spent 3 weekends assembling little boxes of honey from local beekeepers, tying each one with silk ribbon. The flower arrangements. I drove Catherine to 5 different florists until she found the exact shade of blush pink she wanted. I had thrown her a bridal shower for 40 women. I had organized her bachelorette party. I had taken her dress shopping, sitting outside the fitting room for 4 hours while she tried on gown after gown, telling her she looked beautiful in every single one until she found the one. I thought we were bonding. I thought I was gaining a daughter. James saw me in the hallway near the bridal suite. He was in his tuxedo, looking so much like his father that my heart physically hurt. He had David's strong jawline, his warm brown eyes, his confident smile. He was handsome, confident. My boy had become a man, and I was so proud I could barely breathe. "Mom," he said, embracing me tightly, "you look beautiful. Dad would be so proud of you." "Not as beautiful as you look, my love," I replied, touching his face the way I used to when he was a little boy with scraped knees and big dreams. "I'm so happy for you. This is everything I've ever wanted for you." He smiled. It was a real smile, warm and genuine. The smile I remembered from when he was 10 years old, and I surprised him with tickets to his first baseball game. "I couldn't do this without you, Mom. You know that, right? You've been my rock my entire life. Everything I am is because of you." I believed him. I held those words close to my heart like a precious treasure. I truly believed he meant them. I should have known better. I should have seen the signs. But love makes us blind, doesn't it? Especially a mother's love. 2 hours later, I was sitting in the 3rd row, watching the ceremony begin. Not the 1st row. Catherine's parents sat there, even though I had raised James alone for 23 years. Even though I had been the one to wake up at 3 in the morning when he had nightmares about losing his father. Even though I had been the one to work double shifts as a nurse, so he could go to college without debt. 3rd row. behind Catherine's parents, behind her grandparents. But I told myself it didn't matter. It was just a seat. What mattered was that I was here, witnessing this moment. Catherine looked stunning in her white dress, a dress I had contributed $5,000 toward because her parents said the budget was tight. James stood at the altar with tears in his eyes. I cried 2 happy tears. The kind of tears a mother sheds when she sees her child find love, when she sees all her sacrifices finally leading to this beautiful moment. The ceremony was perfect. The vows were beautiful. James's voice cracked when he said, "I do." And I pressed my hand to my heart. When they kissed, I stood up and applauded louder than anyone else. This was my moment too. My reward for all those years of sacrifice, of being both mother and father, of working 2 jobs to keep our small house, of never dating, never remarrying, never asking for anything in return except for James's love and respect. The reception began. I watched James cut the cake, a 4-tier masterpiece that cost $2,000, $800 of which I had paid for. I watched him dance with Catherine to their first song. I watched other couples join them on the dance floor. And then James came to me, extending his hand. "May I have this dance, Mom?" We danced to What a Wonderful World, the song David and I had danced to at our wedding. James held me close and whispered, "Thank you for everything, Mom. For raising me. For loving me. For making me the man I am today. I love you so much." I was on top of the world. I felt seen. I felt appreciated. I felt like all the hard years. The nights I went to bed hungry so James could have seconds. The times I wore the same winter coat for 5 years so he could have new school clothes. The moments I cried alone in my bedroom so he wouldn't see my pain, had finally paid off. That feeling lasted exactly 37 minutes. I was standing near the gift table, talking to my friend Patricia who had known James since he was in diapers, when I saw James's best man, Derek, approach him with an urgent expression. Derek's face was tight with concern. They talked in hushed voices near the bar. James's face changed. The joy drained out of it like water from a broken cup, replaced by something I had never seen before. Anger. Cold hard anger. Derek pointed toward me. My stomach dropped. James looked at me. And for just a second, our eyes met. Then he looked away. Then he started walking. Not toward me, but toward the side of the venue where Catherine was standing with her parents. She was wearing a strange expression, satisfied, almost smug. Her mother was whispering urgently in Catherine's ear. Her father looked angry, his face red, his arms crossed. My stomach tightened. Something was wrong. I could feel it in my bones, the way a mother always knows when something bad is about to happen to her child. Except this time, I was about to learn that I wasn't protecting my child from danger. I was the danger. At least, that's what they wanted me to believe. James walked toward me with stiff movements. His jaw was clenched. His hands were balled into fists at his sides. He wasn't my son in that moment. He was a stranger wearing my son's face. A face I had kissed goodnight 1,000 times. A face I had watched grow from baby softness to boyish mischief to manly strength. "Mom, we need to talk. Outside. Now." His voice was sharp. Cold. "James, what's wrong? What happened?" I followed him to the garden terrace, my heart already pounding so hard I thought it might break through my chest. My heels clicked on the marble floor. Other guests were starting to notice. I saw heads turning. Whispers beginning. He wouldn't meet my eyes. Catherine's mother just told me something. "What? About your speech?" I felt confused. My mind was racing, trying to understand. "What speech, honey? I haven't said anything yet. I was planning to do a toast later, at dinner, after her father speaks." "Exactly. Catherine says you can't give a speech." The words didn't make sense. They literally didn't compute in my brain. "I don't understand. You asked me to give a speech. We talked about it weeks ago. You said you wanted me to share memories of you growing up, to welcome Catherine to the family." "I know what I said, but Catherine doesn't want you to. She says it's going to be too emotional, that you're going to make her day about you, that you're going to cry and make everything awkward. She says you'll probably talk about Dad and make everyone sad." I felt like he had slapped me. Hard. Across the face. "James, that's not fair. Your mother has a right to speak at your wedding." I raised you. I was there for every moment of your life. Not if it ruins things. How would my speech ruin anything? I was just going to talk about how proud I am of you, how much I love you, how happy I am that you found Catherine. He looked away, focusing on a point somewhere past my shoulder. Catherine says that your presence is it's already making her uncomfortable. She says you've been looking at her all day like you disapprove of her. Like you're judging her dress, her hair, the way she walks, everything. That's not true. My voice came out louder than I intended. A couple walking past glanced over at us. I lowered my voice. James, I love Catherine. I've done nothing but support this wedding. I've done nothing but try to make her feel welcome in our family. Mom, he said, and his voice sounded so tired. So disappointed in me. The way he used to sound when I told him he couldn't stay out past curfew. Except now I was the one breaking the rules I didn't even know existed. Why does everything have to be about you? Why can't you just be happy for me without making it about yourself? This is my day. Mine and Catherine's. Not yours. I stood there frozen. My own son, the boy I had raised, sacrificed for, given everything to, was accusing me of ruining his wedding. By existing. By being his mother. By having the audacity to be present at the most important day of his life. I would never do that, I said quietly, my voice shaking. I love you more than anything in this world. I just want you to be happy. That's all I've ever wanted. Then prove it. Give me space. Don't give a speech. Don't make a scene. Just blend into the background. Can you do that for me? For once, can you not be the center of attention? The center of attention. I had been sitting in the third row. I had been quietly talking to a friend. I had been trying so hard to be the perfect mother of the groom. Smiling at everyone, complimenting everything, staying out of the way. I wouldn't make a scene, I whispered. Catherine is anxious. She needs today to be perfect. She's been planning this for a year. Her mother spent months organizing everything. I organized things too, James. I helped with everything. Please, Mom. Just don't. He left me standing alone in that beautiful garden. The garden I had helped pay for. The music from the reception floated across the terrace. The DJ I had found and booked. The laughter of guests echoed in the distance. Guests I had helped invite. Addresses I had written by hand. But I felt completely isolated. Completely alone. More alone than I had felt even in those dark days after David died. When the house was too quiet and James was too young to understand why Daddy wasn't coming home. I went back inside. My face hurt from holding the smile. I told myself it was fine. Just a speech. It didn't matter. What mattered was James's happiness. I could let this go. I was his mother. Mothers let things go. Mothers sacrifice. That's what we do. I could let this go. That's what I told myself anyway. But deep down, somewhere in the part of me that had been wounded, I knew something had fundamentally changed. Something had broken that couldn't be fixed with apologies or explanations. I just didn't know yet how bad it was about to get. Because what happened next? What happened in the next hour? That would change everything forever. The dinner service began at 7:30. I sat at the head table, positioned next to James on one side and Catherine on the other. The seating arrangement felt deliberate now, like I was being monitored. Like they needed to keep me close to control me. The conversation was strained. Catherine barely looked at me. When I tried to compliment the centerpieces, the ones I had helped her choose, she gave me a tight smile and turned to talk to her maid of honor. James kept his eyes on his plate, cutting his filet mignon into smaller and smaller pieces, barely eating anything. I could feel Catherine's mother, Linda, staring at me from across the table. Every time I looked up, her eyes were on me, assessing, judging. She leaned over and whispered something to Catherine. They both glanced at me. Catherine nodded. My appetite vanished. The perfectly cooked salmon on my plate, a meal that cost $85 per person, might as well have been cardboard. The speeches began after the main course. I watched the best man, Derek, stand up with his microphone. He was nervous, fumbling with his note cards. He told funny stories about James in college, about their road trips, about the time James accidentally locked himself out of his apartment in his underwear. Everyone laughed. The room was warm with affection and champagne, and the glow of string lights. I clapped along with them, my hands feeling numb, mechanical. My face hurt from holding the smile. I had perfected this smile over the years. The nurse smile, the everything is fine smile, the smile I wore when patients died and I had to comfort their families even though my own heart was breaking. Then Catherine's father, Robert, stood up. He was a tall man, imposing, the kind of man who was used to getting his way. He owned 3 car dealerships in the state. Money came easy to him. He had never known what it was like to choose between paying the electric bill or buying groceries. He cleared his throat and began his speech. My daughter Catherine, he said, his voice booming across the reception hall, has always been exceptional. From the time she was a little girl, she knew exactly what she wanted. She didn't let anyone tell her no. She didn't let anyone stand in her way. He paused. He looked directly at me when he said that last part. His eyes locked onto mine with an intensity that made my blood run cold. She's a fighter. She knows how to protect what's hers. And James, he turned to look at my son. You're a lucky man. Catherine chose you. And in our family, when Catherine chooses something, we make sure she gets it. We make sure nothing and no one interferes with her happiness. The word, no one, hung in the air like a threat. I felt my face burn. The heat spread from my cheeks down my neck. I could feel people turning to look at me, could feel the weight of their stares. Some of them knew. Some of them had heard about the speech incident. The gossip had already started spreading through the reception like wildfire. Patricia, sitting 3 tables away, caught my eye. She looked horrified. She knew what was happening. She had known me for 30 years. She had watched me raise James alone. She knew what this meant. Robert continued his speech, talking about how proud he was, how Catherine had grown up with every advantage, how she deserved only the best in life. He talked about the future, about grandchildren, about family vacations to their beach house in the Hamptons, about the trust fund they had set up for James and Catherine. A trust fund. They had money for trust funds. And yet I had contributed thousands of dollars to this wedding because they said the budget was tight. I felt sick. Robert sat down to thunderous applause. Linda was beaming. Catherine was glowing. James was smiling, but it didn't reach his eyes. Or maybe I just wanted to believe it didn't. Then it was James's turn. My son. My baby. The boy I had rocked to sleep 1,000 nights. The boy I had taught to tie his shoes, to ride a bike, to be kind, to be grateful, to remember where he came from. He stood up, straightened his bow tie, and raised his glass. The room fell silent. I want to thank everyone for being here today, he began. His voice was steady, confident. This day wouldn't be possible without so many people. Here it comes, I thought. Here's where he thanks me. Where he acknowledges everything. Where he makes it right. I want to thank Catherine's parents, Robert and Linda, for welcoming me into their family with open arms. For treating me like a son. For showing me what a real family looks like. What a real family looks like. The words stabbed into me like a knife between my ribs. I want to thank my groomsmen for standing by my side. I want to thank Derek for being my best friend through everything. I want to thank my colleagues at the firm for their support and mentorship. He continued. He thanked the wedding planner. He thanked the band. He thanked the venue coordinator. He thanked people who had known him for 6 months. He didn't thank me. I sat there, frozen, watching my son thank a room full of people who had known him for years, while the woman who had raised him alone, who had given up her own dreams of going back to school to become a nurse practitioner, who had sacrificed her entire youth, her chance at love again, her own happiness, was not even mentioned. Not even a passing reference. Not even a thank you to everyone who helped me get here. Nothing. The glass of champagne in front of me sat untouched. I couldn't drink. My throat was closed. I couldn't smile anymore. The muscles in my face wouldn't cooperate. I couldn't breathe normally. Each breath felt shallow, insufficient. Like I was drowning in a room full of air. James sat down. People applauded. Catherine kissed him. Her father clapped him on the shoulder with pride. And I sat there invisible. After dinner, there was dancing. The DJ played all the hits, upbeat songs that made people flood the dance floor. I watched James dance with Catherine, spinning her around, both of them laughing. I watched him dance with Linda, Catherine's mother, holding her hand carefully, respectfully. I watched him dance with Catherine's grandmother, being gentle and sweet with the elderly woman. I watched him laugh with her family. I watched him take shots at the bar with Robert and his brothers. I watched him live a life that, apparently, had no room for me in it. Several people approached me to make conversation. They asked if I was having a good time. I lied and said yes. They asked if I was emotional seeing James get married. I lied and said they were happy tears. They asked about my speech. I said there had been a change of plans. Patricia came over around 9:30. She sat down next to me, her eyes wet. Margaret, I am so sorry. This is not right. This is not how you deserve to be treated. It's fine, I said automatically. It's not fine. Everyone saw what happened. Everyone noticed. I don't want to talk about it, Pat. She squeezed my hand and left me alone with my thoughts. Around 10 o'clock, I decided to leave. I had had enough. My heart was breaking in 1,000 pieces, and I couldn't sit there and pretend everything was fine anymore. I couldn't watch James laugh and celebrate while I was dying inside. I found James near the bar, surrounded by his college friends. They were loud, drunk, happy. He was in the middle of a story, gesturing wildly with his hands. James, I said quietly, touching his arm. He turned around, his eyes glazed from alcohol. Mom. Hey. You having fun? I'm going home, I told him. His smile faltered for just a second. Already? But it's only 10. The night is still young. We haven't even done the bouquet toss yet. I'm tired, honey. It's been a long day. Oh. He looked at me for a moment, and I hoped, I saw something in his eyes. Guilt maybe. Regret. Recognition that he had hurt me. But then it was gone. Okay. Drive safe. He kissed my cheek, a brief, perfunctory kiss, the kind you give an aunt you barely know at a family reunion. Then he turned back to his friends before I could even respond, before I could say, I love you, or congratulations, or goodbye. I walked out of that reception hall alone. People were still dancing. The DJ was playing September, by Earth, Wind and Fire. Everyone was happy. Everyone was celebrating. Everyone except me. I drove home in silence. The radio stayed off. I needed to think. I needed to process what had just happened. As I drove through the dark streets, past the neighborhoods where I had taken James to school every morning for 12 years, past the park where he had learned to ride a bike, and where I had run beside him shouting, "You're doing it! You're doing it!" Past the library where we spent countless rainy afternoons reading together in the children's section, I thought about all the moments that had led to this one. I thought about being a young widow at 34. I thought about the fear I felt when David died, when the doctors came out and told me he hadn't made it, when I realized I was going to have to be everything to my son: mother, father, provider, emotional support, cheerleader, disciplinarian, teacher, friend. I thought about the nights I cried in my bed after James was asleep, wondering if I was doing it right, if I was enough, if James would grow up okay without a father, if he would resent me for not being able to give him the life other kids had. I thought about the sacrifices. Skipping meals to make sure James had enough to eat. Working graveyard shifts at the hospital, so I could be home when he got back from school. Missing my own sister's wedding in California, because I couldn't afford childcare and couldn't take James out of school. Wearing the same winter coat for 5 years, the same one David had bought me, with the broken zipper I safety pinned closed, because I needed to save every penny for James's college fund. I thought about the birthday parties I threw for him, where I made elaborate cakes from scratch because I couldn't afford bakery cakes. The Halloween costumes I sewed by hand. The Christmas mornings where I wrapped presents I had bought throughout the year on clearance, hiding them in the back of my closet, just so James would have a pile of gifts to open like the other kids. I thought about all the things I never asked for in return. I never expected James to owe me his life. I never kept score. I never threw my sacrifices in his face. I did it all because I loved him. Because he was my son. Because that's what mothers do. But somewhere along the way, that love had not been enough. Somewhere along the way, I had become an inconvenience. A problem to be managed. An embarrassment to be hidden away. I got home around 11. The house was dark and empty. So empty. James's childhood bedroom was upstairs, exactly as he had left it when he moved out 4 years ago. His high school trophies still on the shelf. His posters still on the walls. His bed still made with the blue comforter he had picked out when he was 14. I sat in my living room. The small, modest living room I had decorated myself, with furniture I had carefully chosen from thrift stores and estate sales, furniture I had refinished with my own hands because I couldn't afford to buy new, and I cried. I cried for the wedding day that had turned into a rejection. I cried for my son, who seemed to have forgotten who I was, forgotten where he came from. I cried for the woman I used to be, the woman who believed that if she just loved hard enough, if she just sacrificed enough, if she just gave enough, everything would work out. That love would be rewarded. That goodness would be recognized. I cried until I had no tears left. Until my eyes were swollen, and my throat was raw. Until I felt completely empty. At midnight my phone rang. I almost didn't answer it. But it was James. Mom. His voice was quieter now. The alcohol had worn off, or maybe the reality of what he had done was sinking in. Mom, are you okay? I've fine, one. I'm sorry about the speech thing. Catherine was just nervous, you know? She's been under so much pressure planning this wedding. She didn't mean to hurt you. It wasn't personal. It wasn't personal. My son's wedding. The exclusion of his own mother. Not personal. It's fine, I said, because that's what mothers do. We absorb the pain so our children don't have to feel guilty about causing it. We make it easy for them. We let them off the hook. We protect them even from themselves. Are you sure? You left so early. Catherine's mom said you seemed upset. Catherine's mom. Of course. Linda had been watching me all night. I'm just tired, sweetheart. It was an emotional day. Congratulations again. I'm very happy for you. There was a pause. A long pause. I could hear music in the background. Could hear Catherine laughing. Thanks, Mom. I love you. I love you too. I hung up the phone and sat there in the darkness, holding the phone against my chest. And I realized something important. Love, all by itself, is not enough to fix broken things. Love doesn't make people see you. Love doesn't make them value you. Love doesn't guarantee respect or gratitude or even basic acknowledgement. Sometimes love just makes you a convenient target. But I also realized something else that night, sitting alone in my dark living room. I was done being invisible. What happened next would change everything. But I didn't know that yet. I didn't know that in exactly 2 weeks, I would receive a phone call that would force me to make the hardest decision of my life. I didn't know that my silence that night would be the last time I stayed quiet. Because what was coming, what James and Catherine had planned for me, was so much worse than anything I could have imagined. For 3 days after the wedding, I didn't hear from James. 3 long days where I jumped every time my phone buzzed, hoping it was him. 3 days where I checked my messages obsessively, scrolling through old texts from him, reading the I love you mom messages from months ago, wondering where that son had gone. I thought maybe he would call to check on me, to see how I was doing, to maybe apologize for the way things had gone. I thought maybe he had woken up the morning after his wedding and realized what he had done. How he had erased me from the most important day of his life, like I was some stranger who had wandered into the wrong celebration. But the phone stayed silent. My phone sat on the kitchen table next to my coffee cup, and I found myself looking at it every few minutes. Every notification made my heart race. But it was never him. Just spam calls. Just emails about sales at stores I couldn't afford to shop at anyway. I called Patricia on day 2. She came over with wine and tissues, even though it was only 2 in the afternoon. He'll come around, she said, rubbing my back while I sat at my kitchen table, staring at nothing. He's just caught up in the newlywed phase. He'll remember who you are. But I wasn't so sure anymore. The James the first knew. The boy who used to crawl into my bed during thunderstorms. The teenager who told me I was his best friend. The young man who cried on my shoulder when his first girlfriend broke his heart. That James felt like a ghost. A memory of someone who didn't exist anymore. On the 4th day, I received a text message. My heart lurched when I saw it was about James. But it wasn't from him. It was from Catherine. Margaret. James and I would like to have dinner with you next Sunday. We want to make things right and talk about moving forward as a family. 7 p.m. at our new apartment. Can't wait to see you. Love, C. I stared at that message for a long time. Love, C. Love. As if we were friends. As if she hadn't just orchestrated my humiliation at the wedding. As if she hadn't whispered poison into my son's ear and convinced him that his own mother was a problem to be solved. The message felt wrong. Too cheerful. Too many exclamation points. Like she was inviting me to a casual girls' brunch, not addressing the fact that she had destroyed one of the most important days of my life. I showed it to Patricia, who was still checking on me daily. Don't go, she said immediately. Margaret, this is a trap. I can feel it. I have to go, I said. He's my son. He's also the man who forgot to thank you at his own wedding. She had a point. But I couldn't not go. Because I'm his mother, and mothers always show up. Even when it costs them. Even when every instinct is screaming that this is a bad idea. I texted back, I'll be there. The response came immediately. Perfect. See you then. Those exclamation points felt like daggers. The days leading up to Sunday crawled by. I changed my mind about going 17 times. I wrote and deleted a dozen text messages saying I couldn't make it. But every time I tried to back out, I thought about James. About the possibility that maybe, just maybe, he had woken up. That maybe he was ready to apologize. That maybe we could fix this. Hope is a dangerous thing for mothers. It keeps us coming back even when we should walk away. Sunday arrived. The night of the dinner. I took extra care with my appearance again, even though I knew I shouldn't. I wore a nice navy blouse, one of the few expensive things I owned, bought 3 years ago for James's college graduation. I paired it with dress pants that I had pressed carefully that morning. I did my hair. I put on lipstick. I brought a housewarming gift, a beautiful ceramic serving platter I had carefully chosen from a boutique in town. It was cream-colored with delicate gold edges. Elegant but not too showy. I had spent $120 on it, money I couldn't really afford, but I wanted to show them I was trying. That I was willing to move forward. That I could be the kind of mother-in-law who brought thoughtful gifts and didn't cause problems. I drove to their new apartment in the upscale part of town, the Riverside district, where the buildings had doormen and marble lobbies and monthly rent that probably cost more than my mortgage payment. The apartment that was so much nicer than my own small house with its outdated kitchen, and the bathroom tiles I couldn't afford to replace. I parked on the street and sat in my car for 5 full minutes, gripping the steering wheel, trying to calm my racing heart. You can do this, I told myself. Just smile. Be pleasant. Don't make waves. I walked into the lobby, all gleaming floors and modern art, and took the elevator to the 8th floor. The hallway was pristine. Quiet. The kind of quiet that comes from thick walls and wealthy neighbors who mind their own business. I found apartment 812 and knocked on the door with my heart in my throat, the wrapped serving platter clutched in my other hand. James opened it. He looked happy, relaxed. He looked like a man who had moved on from the wedding drama without a second thought. Without any of the sleepless nights I had endured. Mom. Cool. You look nice. He hugged me. And for a second, I let myself believe everything would be okay. He smelled like the expensive cologne Catherine must have bought him. Not the Old Spice he used to wear, the one that reminded me of David. The apartment was exactly what I expected. Modern. Sleek. Minimalist in that intentional way that costs a fortune. Gray couches that looked uncomfortable but probably cost thousands. Abstract art on the walls. A kitchen with marble countertops and high-end appliances that gleamed under recessed lighting. There was nothing warm about it. Nothing that felt like home. No photos of James as a child. No memories displayed. Nothing that acknowledged he had existed before Catherine. Catherine emerged from the kitchen, wearing a designer dress that probably cost more than my car payment. Her hair was perfect. Her makeup was flawless. She looked like she belonged in a magazine spread about young successful couples. Margaret. She greeted me with a hug that felt like an act, her body stiff against mine, pulling away quickly. We're so glad you came. Come sit. Dinner is almost ready. Can I get you some wine? Water is fine, I said, even though I desperately wanted that wine. We sat at their dining table, a beautiful dark wood table that sat 8 even though only 2 people lived here. The food was already laid out, clearly catered. I recognized the containers from Bella Cucina, the expensive Italian place downtown. Catherine wouldn't have cooked. She had told me at the bridal shower that she didn't like cooking, that James would have to get used to ordering in. We made small talk. They told me about their honeymoon plans, 2 weeks in Bali at a 5-star resort. I asked questions and smiled and tried not to think about how unwelcome I felt in my own son's life. Tried not to think about how I had spent my honeymoon with David at a budget motel at the beach, and how it had been one of the happiest weeks of my life. The resort has overwater bungalows, Catherine was saying, showing me pictures on her phone, and a spa that overlooks the ocean. James is going to learn to scuba dive. That sounds wonderful, I said, and I meant it. I wanted James to have these experiences. I wanted him to see the world. I just wished I was still part of the world he wanted to share. We ate pasta and salad and bread. Everything tasted like cardboard in my mouth, but I forced myself to eat, to nod, to make the appropriate sounds of appreciation. And then Catherine set down her fork and folded her hands on the table. "Margaret," she said, and her tone shifted, became serious. "I want to apologize for my behavior at the wedding." I felt my shoulders relax slightly. Finally. An apology. An acknowledgement that what she had done was wrong. "I was nervous," she continued, looking me directly in the eyes. "And I took it out on you. The speech thing. That wasn't fair. I should have handled it differently." I felt tears prick at my eyes. This was it. This was the moment where we could move forward. Where we could heal. "That's very kind of you to say." I began, setting down my own fork. "I appreciate that so much. I know weddings are stressful, and But," Catherine said. And there it was. That word. The word that undoes apologies. The word that turns "I'm sorry" into "I'm sorry but you deserved it." My stomach tightened. "But," she continued, leaning forward slightly, her voice taking on a reasonable, almost therapeutic tone, "I also think you need to understand where I was coming from. Where we're coming from." She gestured to include James, who was sitting perfectly still beside her, watching me with an expression I couldn't read. "You see," Catherine said, and now her voice had that practiced quality, like she had rehearsed this speech. "James and I are trying to build our own life now. Our own family. Our own identity as a couple. And I think it's important that he not be so dependent on his mother. It's not healthy for a grown man to be that enmeshed with his parent." The word enmeshed sounded clinical, like she had been reading psychology articles, or like she had been talking to her mother, who I knew had a degree in social work and loved to psychoanalyze people. "Dependent," I said carefully, keeping my voice level even though my heart was starting to race. "I don't think James is dependent on me. We're close, yes, but..." "Well," Catherine interrupted, and now there was an edge to her voice, "you show up at all his work functions. You call him almost every day. Oh, you involve yourself in every major decision he makes. Where we went on our honeymoon, what apartment we chose, even what kind of couch we should buy. That's not independence, Margaret. That's codependency." The words hit me like physical blows. I looked at James. Really looked at him. Waiting for him to defend me. Waiting for him to say, "That's not fair, Catherine. My mom isn't controlling. She's just involved because I asked her to be." But he was looking at his plate. His jaw was clenched. He wouldn't meet my eyes. "James and I talked about this extensively," Catherine continued, and her voice was getting stronger, more confident, like she was gaining ground. "And we've decided that going forward, we need some boundaries. Clear, healthy boundaries. You can see us on holidays, of course, Thanksgiving, Christmas, Easter. And maybe once a month for dinner, if everyone's schedules align. But we can't have you dropping by unannounced. We can't have you calling every day to check in. We need our own space to build our marriage without outside interference." Outside interference. As if I was some kind of intruder. Some busybody neighbor who couldn't mind her own business. As if the bond between a mother and son, a bond forged through tragedy and hardship and 23 years of unwavering love, was an inconvenience to be managed. I felt something shift inside me. Not sadness anymore. That had burned itself out over the past week. This was something else. Something harder. Something that felt like ice forming over a wound. I set down my fork very carefully. Very deliberately. The sound of metal on porcelain was loud in the suddenly quiet apartment. "Catherine," I said, and my voice was steady and calm in a way that surprised even me. "Let me tell you a story." She looked surprised. Her perfectly made-up eyes widened slightly. James looked up from his plate, his expression wary. When James was 7 years old, his father died. Kept my eyes on Catherine, watched her face. It was sudden. A heart attack at 36 years old. One day David was coaching James's soccer team, and the next day he was gone. Collapsed right there at the field. James saw it happen. Catherine shifted uncomfortably. "Good. Do you know what that did to a little boy?" I continued. "Do you know what it's like to watch your 7-year-old son scream for his daddy while paramedics are doing CPR? Do you know what it's like to tuck him into bed every night while he cries and asks why his daddy doesn't love him anymore? Why his daddy left him?" My voice was getting stronger now. "Do you know what it did to a young mother who suddenly had to be everything? Mother, father, comforter, provider, protector. Who had to figure out how to explain death to a child who still believed in Santa Claus." Catherine started to speak. I held up my hand. "No. You wanted to talk about codependency and boundaries. So let me tell you about the last 23 years. I turned slightly to include James in my gaze. "I worked 2 jobs, Catherine. 2 jobs. I worked the day shift at the hospital as a nurse, and then I worked overnight shifts at the clinic 3 nights a week. Do you know why? So that James could go to the same private school as his friends. So that he wouldn't feel like he was missing out because he didn't have a father. So that he could play soccer and baseball and go on the school trips to Washington, D.C. and the Science Center." I could see James's eyes getting red. Good. He should remember. I went to every single school play. Even the ones where he had one line as townsperson number 3. I went to every soccer game. Even when I was so exhausted I could barely stand. I went to every parent-teacher conference, every science fair, every award ceremony. I was always there. Always. My voice cracked slightly, but I pushed through. I helped with homework until midnight. I listened to his problems. I dried his tears when he was bullied in middle school. I held him when he was afraid that he would forget what his father looked like. I stayed up with him when he had nightmares. I taught him to shave. I taught him to tie a tie. I taught him how to treat women with respect. I looked pointedly at Catherine. How to value the people who sacrifice for you. Catherine's face was starting to color. She looked angry now, her jaw tight. "I didn't date," I continued. And now my voice was rising despite my efforts to control it. "Do you know that? For 20 years, I didn't date. I had men interested in me. Good men. Men who wanted to take me to dinner, wanted to be part of our lives. But I said no. Every single time. Do you know why? Neither of them answered. Because I wanted James to have a stable home. Because I didn't want him to feel like he had to compete for my attention. Because I wanted him to know that he was my priority. That he was enough. That he was everything." I stood up from the table now. I couldn't sit anymore. I didn't go on vacations. The beach house we went to every summer? That was my friend Patricia's place. She let us stay there for free because she knew I couldn't afford a real vacation. I didn't buy myself nice things. I wore the same winter coat for 8 years. The same one David bought me. I drove the same car for 12 years until it literally wouldn't run anymore. Everything I had, everything I was, went into raising a good man. A kind man. A man with values. A man who understood loyalty and gratitude and love. I looked directly at James, and he finally met my eyes. There were tears running down his face now. And I never, not once, asked him to repay me. I never kept score. I never threw my sacrifices in his face. I never said, "You owe me because I gave up my life for you." Because that's not how love works. Real love doesn't keep accounts. Real love gives freely. Real love doesn't expect anything in return except basic respect and acknowledgement. Catherine stood up now too, her chair scraping against the floor. "You don't get to come into our home, Anne. You're home." I turned to her, and I felt all the anger I had been suppressing for weeks finally break free. This home exists because I raised a man who could get a good job, who could be someone worth marrying. This life you're enjoying, the good husband, the financial security, the bright future, exists because I spent 23 years making sure James became someone worthwhile. Mom, James said, his voice broken. So when you tell me, I continued, my eyes back on Catherine, that I'm being dependent or codependent, what you're really saying is that you want me to disappear. You want me to fade into the background, so you can have my son all to yourself. So you can pretend he didn't have a whole life before you. So you don't have to share him or his love or his attention. Catherine's face was bright red now. That's not what this is about. This is about healthy boundaries between. And what hurts the most, I said, my voice breaking now, looking at James, is that my son is letting you do it. My son is choosing someone he's known for 3 years over the woman who raised him, who gave up everything for him, who would have died for him without a second thought. Mom, that's not what this is about, James said quietly, desperately. Isn't it? I looked at him, really looked at him, and I saw my son, but I also saw a boy who had been manipulated, a man who had been told so many times that his mother was a problem that he had started to believe it. James, do you really believe that your mother is codependent? Do you really believe that I'm unhealthy? Or has someone told you that often enough that you've started to believe it? He didn't answer. He just stood there, tears streaming down his face, trapped between the woman who raised him and the woman who was sharing his bed. Answer me, I said softly. Do you really believe I'm the problem? Because I remember a boy who used to tell me I was his hero. I remember a teenager who said I was the strongest person he knew. I remember a young man who thanked me at his college graduation for being everything a parent should be. Where did that person go, James? Things change, he whispered. People grow up. They have to separate from their parents. Separate, yes, I said. But not erase. Not forget. Not pretend that the first 23 years of your life don't matter, because they're inconvenient to your new wife. I picked up my purse from where I had set it on their expensive console table. I'm leaving, I said. But before I do, I want you both to hear something. Catherine was standing now too, her face red with anger and maybe embarrassment. You don't get to talk to me like that in my own home. You need to leave. Now. No, you're right. This is your home now. I looked at James one more time. But I want to leave you with one thought. Just one. And I want you to remember it. The apartment was completely silent. Even the city noise from outside seemed to have stopped. Son, I said, and my voice was steady again. One day you're going to realize that the people who loved you when you had nothing are more valuable than the people who love you when you have everything. One day you're going to understand that the person who held your hand through your darkest moments is worth more than the person who wants to enjoy only your brightest days. James was crying openly now. And one day, I continued, you're going to want to call me. Maybe when you're having a hard time. Maybe when something goes wrong. Maybe when you realize that life isn't always as simple as choosing sides. Maybe when you have children of your own, and you finally understand what I gave up for you. I walked toward the door. And by then, I said, my hand on the doorknob, it might be too late. Margaret, wait, Catherine called after me. But her voice was uncertain now. Like maybe she was realizing she had pushed too far. But I didn't turn around. I couldn't. Because if I looked at James's face one more time, I would break. I would apologize. I would take it all back just to make him stop crying. And I couldn't do that anymore. I walked out of that apartment and closed the door behind me. I walked down the hallway with my head high. Even though inside I was shattering. I took the elevator down to the lobby, nodding politely at the doorman who asked if I had a nice evening. I got to my car and sat in the driver's seat for a long time before I started the engine. I gripped the steering wheel and let myself feel everything. The anger, the hurt, the grief of losing my son, not to death, but to something worse. To a living estrangement. To a choice he was making. But this time I didn't cry. I had cried enough. I had been sad enough. I had been small enough. Instead, I felt something new. Something that felt like strength. Like self-respect. Like a woman who had finally remembered her own worth. I drove home in the dark, and for the first time in my life, I didn't cry over James. Instead, I made a decision. A decision that would change everything. I was done fighting for someone who didn't want to be kept. I was done sacrificing for someone who saw that sacrifice as suffocation. I was done being invisible. And what happened next, what I did in the coming weeks, would make James understand exactly what he had lost. But I didn't know that yet. I didn't know that my silence would be the loudest message I could send. I didn't know that sometimes the most powerful thing a mother can do is walk away. 2 weeks passed. 2 weeks of silence. 2 weeks of my phone not ringing with James's name on the screen. 2 weeks of me going to work, coming home, and staring at the walls of my house, wondering where I went wrong. Wondering if I had been too harsh at that dinner. Wondering if I should have just accepted the boundaries and kept my mouth shut. Wondering if I had just lost my son forever. I work as a nurse at St. Mary's Hospital. It's a job I've had for 26 years now. The same hospital where James was born. The same hospital where David died. The same hallways I've walked through thousands of times, witnessing life and death in equal measure. It's a job that has always grounded me, given me purpose. When everything else in my life felt like it was falling apart, the hospital was constant. I help people when they're at their most vulnerable. I hold their hands when they're scared. I listen to their stories when no one else will. I clean their wounds and administer their medications, and sometimes, I'm the last person they see before they pass away. In a strange way, the hospital became more of a home to me than my actual house. At work, I knew who I was. I was Nurse Margaret. I was competent. I was needed. I was valued. At home, I was just a woman who had lost her son to a marriage. Those 2 weeks were the longest of my life. Longer even than the weeks after David died, because at least then I had James. I had a purpose. I had someone who needed me. Now I had no one. Patricia called me every day during those 2 weeks. She tried to encourage me. She told me James would come around. She brought me casseroles I couldn't eat, and sat with me while I pretended to be okay. But I wasn't okay. I was grieving. Grieving for a son who was still alive but felt dead to me. Grieving for a relationship that I thought was unbreakable, but turned out to be fragile as glass. On a Tuesday morning, exactly 16 days after that awful dinner at James's apartment, I was doing rounds in the cardiac unit. It was busy. It was always busy. Heart attacks don't take days off. I was checking on a patient in room 412, Mr. Henderson, an elderly man who had just had triple bypass surgery. He was telling me about his grandson who was graduating from high school, showing me pictures on his phone with shaking hands, and I was smiling and nodding and thinking about how James's high school graduation felt like a lifetime ago. That's when I heard a familiar voice in the hallway. A voice that didn't belong in my hospital. In my safe space. I stepped out of Mr. Henderson's room and froze. It was Linda, Catherine's mother. She was sitting in a wheelchair near the nurse's station, and Catherine was standing beside her, looking disheveled, upset. Not the perfectly put-together woman I had seen at the apartment. Her hair was pulled back in a messy ponytail. Her eyes were red. She was wearing jeans and a sweatshirt, casual clothes I had never seen her in. Linda looked pale, weak. Her face was drooping slightly on the left side, like someone who had recently suffered a serious health event. My nurse instincts kicked in immediately. Left-sided facial droop. Weakness. Wheelchair. Stroke. Probably recent. Catherine hadn't noticed me yet. She was talking to Jennifer, one of the nurses at the station. I heard her say, "My mother had a massive stroke 3 days ago. They're saying she's lucky to be alive, but her left side is partially paralyzed. She can't use her left arm at all. Her leg barely works. It's going to be a long recovery. They're saying months, maybe a year of physical therapy." Her voice cracked. She sounded exhausted, scared. I felt a chill run down my spine. Not joy at their misfortune. I'm not that kind of person. I would never wish this on anyone. But a strange sense that life had a way of teaching lessons. That karma, as they say, has an address book. I turned to go back to Mr. Henderson's room. This wasn't my patient. This wasn't my business. I had my own pain to deal with. But Linda looked up and saw me. "Margaret," she called out weakly. Her speech was slurred slightly, another sign of the stroke's impact. Catherine's head snapped toward me. Her expression shifted through several emotions in quick succession. Surprise, shock, guilt, then something that looked almost like relief. Or maybe desperation. Margaret, Linda said again, her good hand reaching out slightly. Oh my God, Margaret, is that you? I approached them slowly. I was a professional. I could do this. No matter what this woman's daughter had done to me, I was a nurse first. I had taken an oath. Mrs. Linda, I'm so sorry to hear about your stroke. How are you feeling? Terrified, she said honestly, and the word came out garbled. She had to repeat it twice before I understood. The doctors say I need months of physical therapy. They say I might never fully recover. It's going to be hard. So hard. Tears were running down her face now. The strong, imposing woman who had stared me down at the wedding was gone. In her place was just a scared patient facing a long, uncertain recovery. Catherine was watching me carefully, studying my face like she was trying to read my thoughts. Margaret, I didn't know you worked on this floor. I didn't know. I work here, I said simply, keeping my voice neutral. Professional. I'm a cardiac nurse. I've been here for 26 years. Of course. I knew that. James told me. She shifted uncomfortably, her hands twisting together. How have you been? The question was so absurd I almost laughed. How had I been? How had I been since your dinner where you accused me of being codependent? Since you tried to erase me from my son's life? Fine, I said. And you? Good. I mean, not good. Obviously. With my mom. But otherwise busy. James and I have been busy. The way she said it felt like a lie. There was something hollow in her voice. Something that suggested things weren't as perfect as she wanted me to believe. Linda grabbed my hand suddenly. Her grip was weak, but there was real desperation in it. Her fingers were cold. Trembling. Margaret, she said urgently, struggling with the words. I need help. Catherine is trying to manage everything. My recovery, my house, her job, everything, and she's overwhelmed. She's so overwhelmed. James has been helping when he can, but he has his own job, his own life, and... She trailed off, her eyes filling with tears again. Mom, don't, Catherine said sharply, her voice tight. We can manage. We're managing fine. Catherine, Linda said, and despite her weakness, despite her slurred speech, there was steel in her voice. A mother's voice. A voice that demanded to be heard. I need to ask Margaret something. And you're going to let me? Catherine's face went pale. Mother, this isn't the time or place. There's never going to be a good time for this, Linda interrupted. She looked at me, and I saw something in her eyes I hadn't expected. Regret. Deep, profound regret. Margaret, I need to apologize to you. But before I do that, I need to ask you something. She paused, gathering her strength, struggling to form the words clearly. Would you be willing to help? With my recovery? Just for a few weeks? We can pay you, of course. Whatever your rate is. I need someone who knows what they're doing. Someone who cares about people. Someone like you. Catherine's face went white. Actually white. Like all the blood had drained out of it. Mother, absolutely not. That's not appropriate. We can hire a professional home health aide. We don't need to. Not appropriate. Linda's voice rose as much as it could in her weakened state. Then she winced in pain, her hand going to her head. What's not appropriate is how you've treated James's mother. What's not appropriate is that you made James choose between his mother and us. What's not appropriate is the way you've been lying to him. The hallway suddenly felt very quiet. Jennifer at the nurse's station was pretending not to listen, but I could see her eyes were wide. This was better than any daytime drama. Mom, Catherine stood up abruptly, her chair scraping against the floor. We are not discussing this here. Not now. Not in front of. Then when? Linda looked at her daughter with an expression I recognized. The same expression I had given James at that dinner. Disappointment. Deep, soul-crushing disappointment. When are we going to discuss the fact that you manipulated my grandson into cutting his mother out of his life? When are we going to talk about how you convinced him that the woman who sacrificed everything for him is somehow toxic? My heart stopped. Manipulated. The word hung in the air like smoke. Catherine's face was now burning red. You don't understand the situation. You don't understand what it's like to. Then explain it to me, Linda said, her voice getting stronger despite the slurring. Explain to me why a woman who raised a good man, who worked 2 jobs, who gave up her entire life for her son, is someone who needs to be cut out. Explain to me what she did that was so terrible that she deserves to be erased. Catherine looked like she wanted to run. Her eyes were darting around, looking for an escape route. But we were blocking her path to the elevator. It's complicated, she managed to say. It's not complicated, Linda said. It's simple. You wanted James all to yourself. You wanted him to depend only on you. You wanted to be the only woman in his life. And you couldn't do that if his mother was still in the picture. The words felt like a bomb exploding in the hallway. Linda looked back at me, and I could see tears streaming down her face now. Margaret, I owe you an apology. A real one. Not the fake one Catherine gave you at that dinner. I owe you an explanation. But first, I need you to know something about my daughter. She paused, taking a shaky breath. Catherine has always been competitive. Since she was a little girl. If another child had a toy, she had to have it. If another girl got attention, she had to get more. If someone else won something, she would practice until she won it the next time. It was never enough to have something. She had to be the only one who had it. Catherine made a small sound, like she'd been hit. When she married James, Linda continued, her words coming slowly but deliberately, she wanted him to cut off his mother so that I would be the only mother figure in his life. The only female influence. The only family reference. She wanted to replace you. Not just in James's life, but completely. Linda's voice broke. I didn't see it clearly until 3 days ago. Until I was lying on my bathroom floor, paralyzed, unable to move or speak, and Catherine found me. She called 911. She saved my life. But while we were waiting for the ambulance, while I was lying there terrified and unable to speak, I watched her. I watched her pick up her phone and make a call. My hands were shaking now. She called James, Linda said. And I heard her say, "Your mom reached out to me today. She's still trying to cause problems. We need to stay strong. We need to keep our boundaries." But you hadn't reached out, had you, Margaret? I shook my head slowly. No. I haven't contacted either of them since that dinner. I know, Linda said. Because I heard everything. I couldn't move. I couldn't speak. But I could hear. And I realized that my daughter had been lying. Not just to James, but to me. To everyone. Catherine's face was now red with anger and humiliation. You had just had a stroke. You were confused. You don't know what you heard. I know exactly what I heard, Linda said firmly. And when I got to the hospital, when I could finally speak a little bit, I asked to see Catherine's phone. I told her I needed to call my sister. But what I really needed was to see her messages. Her call logs. Her recordings. She looked at me. Margaret, did you know that Catherine has been recording her conversations with James? Hours and hours of conversations where she's slowly, methodically convincing him that you're a problem. I felt like the ground had disappeared beneath my feet. She has recordings. I whispered. Linda nodded. Voice memos. Notes. Screenshots of articles about enmeshed mother-son relationships and toxic parents and how to set boundaries with manipulative family members. She's been building a case against you like a lawyer. And James, poor James, he's been so in love, so eager to make his new wife happy, that he believed every word. Catherine looked like she wanted to disappear. You went through my phone? You violated my privacy? I couldn't move, Catherine. Linda's voice rose as much as her weakened state allowed. I couldn't speak clearly. I was reaching for your phone to call my sister, to call for help, and it fell open. The voice memo app was still running. And I heard you. I heard you telling James that his mother called you crying and begging to be included in your lives. But she didn't do that, did she? No, I said quietly. I haven't called either of them. She's been manufacturing scenarios, Linda said, and now she was openly weeping. She's been creating situations that make you look desperate and clingy. She's been lying to my grandson. And I didn't see it. I didn't see it because I was so happy that my daughter was married, that she had found someone, that I wasn't looking at what she was doing to achieve it. Linda grabbed my hand again with surprising strength. I've made a lot of mistakes as a parent, Margaret. So many mistakes. I gave Catherine everything. Every toy, every advantage, every opportunity. I never made her share. I never made her compromise. I never taught her that love isn't a competition. That family isn't about exclusion. That you don't have to tear other people down to build yourself up. Her voice broke completely. And I'm so deeply sorry about that. I'm sorry that my failure as a parent has hurt you, has hurt James, has hurt this whole family. She looked at Catherine, who was now crying too, but not the kind of crying that comes from remorse. The kind that comes from being caught. I'm not going to watch you destroy James's relationship with his mother, Linda said. Not anymore. I'm not going to let you turn that boy into someone who abandons the people who love him. I'm not going to let you create the kind of man who forgets where he came from. Patricia looked back at me, her eyes pleading. Margaret, I'm asking you. Not as Catherine's mother, but as someone who clearly raised a better human being than I did. Will you help me? Will you help this family heal from what Catherine has broken? Will you help me make this right? I stood there in that hospital hallway, completely stunned. I had come to work that day thinking it would be just another shift. Just another day of checking vitals and administering medications, and trying not to think about the son who had erased me from his life. I never expected this. I never expected the truth to come out like this. I never expected to learn that everything, the wedding, the dinner, the boundaries, had all been orchestrated by Catherine. My son hadn't chosen her over me. He had been manipulated into thinking he had to. I'll think about it, I said carefully, my voice shaking. Because I needed time to process this. I needed time to figure out what this meant. I needed time to decide if I could forgive James for being so easily led astray. Don't think too long, Linda said urgently. Because Catherine has been counting the days until you disappear completely. Haven't you, sweetheart? You've had a countdown, haven't you? Just a few more months. You told me last week. And James will forget all about his old life. Catherine didn't answer. She just grabbed her purse and ran. Literally ran down the hallway, her footsteps echoing, not even bothering to help her mother who had just had a stroke. We watched her go. The elevator doors closed behind her. Linda closed her eyes, exhausted. I'm so tired, Margaret. I'm so tired of the games. I'm so tired of watching people hurt each other. All I want now is for this family to be whole again. For the damage to be repaired. And for that to happen, James needs to know the truth. She opened her eyes and looked at me. He needs to know what his wife has been doing. And he needs to know it before it's too late. Before he loses you forever. Because you're the best thing that ever happened to that boy. And if Catherine succeeds in driving you away permanently. She didn't finish the sentence. She didn't have to. I squeezed her hand. Let me think about it, Linda. Let me process this. This is a lot. I know, she said. But please don't take too long. Because every day that passes is another day James believes the lies. Another day you're suffering. Another day this family is broken. I left her there with Jennifer, who had already started arranging for Linda's transfer to a room. I went back to Mr. Henderson, checked his vitals, smiled and nodded while he talked about his grandson, and then I went to the break room. And I called Patricia. You're never going to believe what just happened, I said. And as I told her the story, as I repeated Linda's words, as I explained about the recordings and the lies and the manipulation, I felt something I hadn't felt in weeks. Hope. Not the dangerous kind of hope that sets you up for disappointment, but the real kind. The kind that comes from knowing the truth. Because now I knew. I knew that James hadn't rejected me. He had been deceived. He had been manipulated by someone he trusted. Someone he loved. And that meant there was a chance. Maybe just a small one, but a chance nonetheless. That when he learned the truth, when he saw the evidence, when he understood what Catherine had done, he might come back to me. But first, I had a decision to make. Would I help Linda? Would I step back into this family that had hurt me so badly? Would I risk being hurt again? Or would I walk away and let them figure it out on their own? I didn't know yet. But I knew one thing for certain. The truth was coming out. And when it did, everything was going to change. That evening after my shift ended, I sat in my car in the hospital parking lot. The sun was setting, painting the sky in shades of orange and pink. Beautiful. But I couldn't feel it. 45 minutes. That's how long I sat there. I didn't drive home. I didn't go anywhere. I just sat there with my hands on the steering wheel, thinking about what Linda had said. Voice recordings. Screenshots. Articles about toxic mothers. Catherine had been systematically poisoning James against me, building a case like a prosecutor preparing for trial. And I had almost believed her. I had almost accepted that maybe I really was the problem, that maybe I really was too demanding, too present, too much. But I wasn't. I was just a mother who loved her son. I picked up my phone. The screen lit up in the darkness of my car. I scrolled through my contacts until I found James's number. The number I had called thousands of times over the years. The number I used to call when he was in college and homesick. The number he used to call me from when he needed advice or comfort, or just wanted to hear my voice. My finger hovered over the call button. One tap. That's all it would take. But I didn't call. Not yet. Because I didn't know what to say. Because I was afraid that if I called I would cry. I would beg. I would make it worse. Instead, I scrolled further and called my sister Diana. Diana, who lived in Arizona. Diana, who I hadn't talked to in weeks. Not since the wedding, when things had gotten so strange and I had been too ashamed to explain what happened. Margaret. She picked up on the second ring. Is everything okay? The concern in her voice almost broke me. We hadn't spoken in so long that hearing her voice made me realize how isolated I had let myself become. How small my world had gotten. No, I said, and my voice cracked. Everything is not okay. And I need to tell you what's been happening. So I did. Sitting in that dark parking lot, watching hospital staff come and go through the illuminated entrance, I told Diana everything. The wedding. How I'd sat in the third row. How James hadn't thanked me in his speech. How Catherine had made me feel invisible. The dinner at their apartment. The accusations of codependency. The boundaries they wanted to impose. The way James had just sat there and let it happen. And then today. Linda in the wheelchair. The stroke. The revelation about the recordings. The manipulation. The lies. Diana listened in silence. She didn't interrupt once. And when I finished, when I had poured out everything, she was quiet for a long moment. Margaret, she finally said, and her voice was gentle but firm, you need to think about this carefully. What do you mean? James is a grown man. He's 30 years old. Whatever Catherine has been telling him, he's choosing to believe it. He's choosing to let you disappear from his life. That's not entirely Catherine's fault. That's his choice. The words hit me like cold water. But she manipulated him. Yes. But he allowed himself to be manipulated, Diana said. Because maybe, and I know this is hard to hear, but maybe part of him wanted an excuse to push you away. Maybe he needed to feel independent from you. And Catherine just gave him permission to do what he secretly wanted to do anyway. I felt tears starting to fall again. Hot tears that burned my cheeks. You're saying this is my fault? No. I'm saying it's his choice. Margaret, you've spent 30 years making everything about James. His needs. His happiness. His comfort. You've forgotten that you're allowed to have needs too. You're allowed to expect basic respect and gratitude. You're allowed to walk away from people who hurt you, even if that person is your son. I couldn't speak. My throat was too tight. So what do? I finally managed to whisper. You tell him the truth, Diana said firmly. You tell him everything. You show him the evidence if Linda is willing to provide it. And then you let him decide what he wants to do with that truth. Because at the end of the day, James is not a child anymore. He's a man who made a choice. And he has to live with the consequences of that choice. And you, Margaret, you have to decide if you're willing to keep sacrificing yourself for someone who doesn't seem to value those sacrifices. After I hung up with Diana, I sat in my car in the dark for another 20 minutes. She was right. She was absolutely right. I had been so focused on not losing James that I had lost myself. I had been so willing to bend, to accept blame, to disappear, that I had taught him it was okay to treat me that way. I had taught him that my feelings didn't matter, that I would always be there no matter what, that he could take me for granted. It was time to stop. I drove home. The streets were dark and quiet. I passed the school where James had gone to elementary school. The park where I had pushed him on swings. The library where we had spent rainy Saturday afternoons. Everywhere I looked, I saw ghosts of us. Of who we used to be. I got home and made myself dinner. Not the sad frozen meal I had been eating for weeks. But real food. I cooked pasta. I made a salad. I poured myself a glass of wine. I sat at my small kitchen table. The table where I had helped James with homework every night for 12 years. The table where we had shared countless meals. The table where we had laughed together over silly jokes and talked about his dreams and plans for the future. And I ate my meal slowly, deliberately. I tasted every bite. I was present in my own life for the first time in weeks. Then I picked up my phone. I typed out a text message to James. James, we need to talk. Not at your apartment. Somewhere neutral. Tomorrow at 6 p.m. at Miller's Coffee Shop on Main Street. Please come alone. This is important. Mom. I stared at the message for a full minute. My finger hovered over the send button. Then I hit send before I could second-guess myself. The message showed as delivered. Then read. 3 dots appeared. He was typing. My heart was pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. His response came. Is everything okay? Are you sick? I stared at those words. Are you sick? The only reason he could imagine me demanding to see him was if something was wrong with me. Not because I deserved an explanation. Not because he owed me a conversation. But because I might be dying. I didn't respond. I turned off my phone and went to bed. Let him sit with the uncertainty for a night. Let him feel a fraction of what I had been feeling for weeks. Let him wonder. Let him worry. Let him remember what it feels like to need someone and not get an immediate answer. I lay in bed staring at the ceiling, and for the first time in a long time, I felt something other than sadness. I felt power. Tomorrow everything would change. Tomorrow James would learn the truth. And tomorrow I would find out if my son was the man I raised him to be, or if Catherine had succeeded in turning him into someone I no longer recognized. I didn't know which answer scared me more. James was already at the coffee shop when I arrived. He looked nervous. His coffee sat untouched in front of him. He kept checking his phone, checking his watch, looking at the door, looking everywhere except at me. I got my own coffee, black like always, and sat down across from him. For a moment neither of us spoke. Thank you for coming, I finally said. Of course. His voice cracked slightly. Mom, are you sick? Did something happen? Your text scared me. That question. Those words. They told me everything I needed to know. He still cared. Whatever Catherine had said, whatever he believed, there was still love underneath all the lies. I saw Linda today, I said calmly. His eyes widened. Catherine's mom? Where? She's been. She had a stroke, James. She's at St. Mary's Hospital. Where I work. What? He sat up straighter. Is she okay? She'll recover. But it's going to take time. Physical therapy. Months of it. Catherine didn't tell me she was in the hospital, he said, confused. She just said her mom was having some health issues. Of course she didn't tell him. James, while I was there, something happened. Something you need to know about. I told him everything. Linda in the wheelchair. Her apology. Her confession about Catherine's manipulation. The voice recordings. The articles. The manufactured phone calls that never happened. The lies about me reaching out and causing problems. I watched his face as I spoke. Watched the confusion turn to disbelief. Watched disbelief turn to horror. Watched horror turn to something that looked like heartbreak. No, he said, shaking his head. Catherine wouldn't. She wouldn't do that. There has to be some misunderstanding. James, I have no reason to lie to you. Your mother-in-law told me this herself. She heard the recordings. She saw the messages. She's the one who discovered what Catherine has been doing. He stood up suddenly, his chair scraping against the floor. I need to talk to Catherine. Right now. I need to. Sit down. My voice wasn't loud, but it was firm. It was the voice I used when he was 7 years old and having a tantrum. The voice that meant I am your mother, and you will listen to me. He sat. Before you go anywhere, I said, I need to tell you something. Something I should have said weeks ago. He waited, his hands shaking slightly. I love you, James. I will always love you. You're my son. Nothing will ever change that. I paused. But I should never have accepted the way you've been treating me. I should never have let you erase me from your life just because your wife asked you to. That was my mistake. Mom, let me finish. I kept my voice steady. When your father died, I made a promise. I promised I would be enough for you, that you would never feel the loss of not having a dad. And I kept that promise. But in doing that, I taught you something I didn't mean to teach you. His eyes were filling with tears now. I taught you that my love was unconditional no matter how you treated me, that I would always be there no matter what, that you could take me for granted and I would never leave. And that was wrong, because love should have boundaries. Respect should go both ways. A tear rolled down his cheek. Mom, I'm so sorry. I didn't understand what was happening. Catherine was so convincing. She made everything sound so reasonable. She said you were smothering me, that I'd never be my own person as long as you were in my life. I know, and maybe part of you wanted to believe it. Maybe you did need some distance from me to become your own person. But there's a difference between healthy separation and complete rejection, James. What Catherine wanted wasn't boundaries. It was erasure. He put his head in his hands. What do I do now? How do I fix this? That's your decision to make, I said. But I'll tell you what I'm going to do. He looked up. I'm going to live my life. I'm going to be a great nurse. I'm going to spend time with people who value me. I'm going to find happiness that isn't centered on you or your choices. And I'm going to love you from a healthy distance until you figure out who you want to be. Does that mean you don't want to see me? His voice broke. It sounded like the voice of that 7-year-old boy whose father had just died. It means I want a different relationship with you. Not a desperate one. Not one where my entire existence depends on your approval. I want to see you as a mother sees an adult son. With love but also with respect. With the understanding that you're your own person making your own choices. James reached across the table and grabbed my hand. I'm sorry, Mom. I'm so sorry. I squeezed his hand back. Being sorry isn't enough, James. You have to do the work. You have to figure out why you let this happen. And you have to decide what kind of man you want to be. We sat there for a long time. And James started talking. Really talking. He told me things he'd been hiding. How Catherine had slowly cut him off from his friends. How she questioned every decision. How he'd started to feel like he couldn't do anything right. When she said you were the problem, he admitted, it felt like a relief. Like maybe if I just pushed you away, everything would be easier. I understand that, I said. But now you know the truth. So the question is, what are you going to do about it? James was quiet for a long moment. I think I need help, he said finally. Like professional help. Therapy. That's a good idea. What about Catherine? He asked quietly. What do I do about her? I chose my words carefully. That's between you and her, James. But I'll tell you this. Someone who manipulates you like this, who tries to isolate you from everyone who loves you. That's not healthy. That's not love. That's control. And only you can decide what you're willing to accept. He nodded slowly, tears streaming down his face. As I left the coffee shop that night, I didn't feel victorious. I didn't feel like I'd won some battle. But I felt something better. I felt like myself again. Like a woman who had standards. A woman who wouldn't disappear just to make other people comfortable. A woman who loved her son, but not at the cost of her own dignity. I walked to my car in the cool night air, and for the first time in weeks I felt light. But as I reached for my door handle, my phone buzzed. A text message. From Catherine. We need to talk. Now. I stared at the screen. My heart started pounding again. What did she want? Had James already called her? Had she heard about Linda's confession? Or was this something else entirely? I got in my car, but I didn't start the engine. I just sat there staring at those 4 words. We need to talk. Now, whatever happened next, I knew one thing for certain. This was far from over. James went home that night and confronted Catherine. I didn't see it happen. But he called me the next day at work. During my lunch break, I stepped into the empty break room and answered. Mom. His voice sounded hollow. Exhausted. We need to talk. My heart started pounding. What happened? I confronted her. About everything. The recordings. The lies. All of it. And she denied it. She said Linda was confused from the stroke, that she didn't know what she was talking about, that it was all a misunderstanding. I gripped the phone tighter. What did you do? I asked to see her phone. I told her I wanted to hear the recordings myself. There was a long pause. James. She refused, Mom. She said her phone was private, that I was violating her trust by even asking. Oh, James. So I insisted. And that's when everything changed. I could hear the pain in his voice, the disbelief. She exploded, started screaming at me, said I was choosing you over her, that I was ungrateful after everything she'd done for me, that I was a pathetic mama's boy who would never be his own man. My chest tightened. What did you say? I told her the truth, that she had been manipulating me this entire time, that I had been so desperate to feel independent, that I let her convince me to throw away the one person who loved me unconditionally. James. I told her I wanted to separate, that I needed space, that I was moving out. The words hung in the air between us. How did she react? She threatened me, Mom. Said she'd go back to her parents and take everything. The furniture. The wedding gifts. Everything. She said she'd tell everyone I abandoned her for my mommy. She said she'd ruin my reputation at work. She became someone I didn't recognize. I closed my eyes. This was the real Catherine, the one who had been hiding behind the perfect facade. I'm so sorry you're going through this. I'm the one who should be sorry, he said, his voice breaking. To you. For not believing you. For choosing her over you. For letting her turn me into someone who could hurt you like that. James, listen to me. You didn't know. You made decisions based on lies. What matters now is what you do moving forward. I've already started, he said, and I could hear the determination creeping back into his voice. I found a therapist. First appointment is next week. And I told Catherine this morning that I'm leaving. I'm staying with Derek for now. Good. That's good, honey. But Mom, there's something else. My stomach dropped. What? Catherine called her parents. They're coming to town. Linda is still in the hospital recovering, but Robert is furious. He called me this morning and said if I walk out on his daughter, he'll make sure I regret it. He threatened you? Not directly, but the message was clear. The family has money, connections. He can make things difficult for me. I felt anger rising in my chest. James, you can't let them intimidate you. I know, but Mom, I need you to be careful too. Catherine knows where you work. She knows your schedule. And when I left this morning, she said something that scared me. What did she say? She said, your mother thinks she's won. But this isn't over. Not even close. A chill ran down my spine. What does that mean? I asked. I don't know. But I wanted to warn you. Catherine isn't the type to accept defeat. And now that everything is falling apart, I don't know what she's capable of. After we hung up, I sat in that break room for a long time. James was safe. He was getting out. He was getting help. That should have been enough. But Catherine's words echoed in my mind. This isn't over. Not even close. What was she planning? What could she possibly do now that the truth was out? I didn't know. But I had a feeling I was about to find out. Because 2 hours later, as I was finishing my shift, security called me to the front desk. Miss Margaret? There's someone here to see you. She says it's urgent. Who is it? A woman named Catherine. She says she's your daughter-in-law. My blood ran cold. She was here. At my hospital. At my workplace. And she wanted to talk. I walked to the lobby slowly. My heart was racing. My hands were shaking. What did she want? Was this a confrontation? A threat? An apology? And then I saw her. Catherine was standing by the front entrance. Her arms were crossed. Her face was cold. Angry. But there was something else in her expression too. Something that looked almost like desperation. She saw me and straightened up. Margaret, she said. We need to talk. Right now. I took a breath and walked toward her. Whatever was about to happen, I knew one thing. This conversation would change everything. Catherine stood in the hospital lobby, waiting for me. I walked toward her slowly. Every step felt heavy. My colleagues were watching. Security was nearby. I wasn't afraid exactly, but I was ready for anything. "Margaret," she said when I reached her. Her voice was tight, controlled. "Can we talk? Somewhere private." "We can talk here," I said firmly. "Whatever you need to say, you can say it in front of people." Her jaw clenched. "Fine. I just wanted to tell you that you win. Congratulations. You got your son back." "This was never a competition, Catherine. Wasn't it?" Her eyes flashed with anger. "From day one, you made it clear that no one would ever be good enough for James. That I could never measure up to the perfect mother who sacrificed everything. That's not true. Isn't it? You paid for half the wedding. You were at every planning meeting. You made sure everyone knew that James wouldn't be where he is without you. You made me feel like a guest in my own marriage." I took a breath. Stayed calm. "Catherine, I helped because James asked me to. I was involved because you both included me. If that made you uncomfortable, you should have said something instead of manipulating my son against me." "I wasn't manipulating him. I was protecting our marriage." "By lying? By recording conversations and making up phone calls that never happened? That's not protection, Catherine. That's control." Her face turned red. "You don't understand what it's like to compete with a ghost." "A ghost?" "His perfect mother. His saint of a mother who can do no wrong. Do you know what it's like to hear my mom would do it this way every single day? To know that no matter what I do, I'll never be you." For a moment I saw something in her eyes. Real pain. Real fear. "Catherine," I said more gently, "you were never supposed to be me. You were supposed to be his partner. His equal. But you can't build a partnership on lies and manipulation." "I was scared," she said, and her voice cracked. "I was scared that he would always love you more than me. That I would always be second place. So you tried to eliminate the competition." "Yes." She looked down. "And I lost him anyway." The anger in her face crumbled, replaced by something that looked like defeat. "James filed for divorce," she said quietly. "This morning. His lawyer sent the papers." I didn't know what to say. "He's moving back home with you, isn't he?" she asked bitterly. "No. He's staying with his friend Derek. He needs space to figure things out." "Right. Space." She laughed without humor. "From me. Not from you. Catherine, I think you need help. Professional help. Not because you're broken, but because you have patterns that are destroying your relationships." James said the same thing. She wiped her eyes. "He said he hopes I get therapy, that he hopes I heal, but that he can't be married to someone who would do what I did." "He's right." She looked at me with red eyes. "I wanted to hate you. It would be so much easier if I could just hate you. But the truth is, you're exactly who James said you were. A good person who loves her son. And I tried to destroy that because I was insecure." "What are you going to do now?" I asked. "I don't know. Move back with my parents, I guess. Figure out who I am without James. Without this marriage I built on lies." She paused. "My mom is still in the hospital, you know. She won't talk to me. She says she's ashamed of what I did. Give her time. She's processing everything too." Catherine nodded slowly. "I should go. I just wanted to. I don't know what I wanted. Maybe to see if there was any way to fix this. But I can see from your face that there isn't. You can't fix this, Catherine. But you can fix yourself. And maybe that's enough." She started to walk away, then stopped. Turned back. "Can I ask you something?" "What?" "Do you forgive me?" I thought about that question. Really thought about it. "I'm working on it," I said honestly. "Ask me again in a year." She gave me a small sad smile. Then she left. I watched her walk out of the hospital. Out of my life. Maybe forever. And I felt something unexpected. Not victory. Not satisfaction. But relief. The war was over. The truth was out. And James was free. But as I walked back to my floor, my phone buzzed. A text from James. "Mom, we need to talk. Something happened. Can you come over tonight?" My heart sank. What now? What else could possibly happen? I texted back. "I'll be there at 7. And as I finished my shift, one question kept running through my mind. After everything we'd been through, After all the lies and manipulation and pain, what could possibly be left? I was about to find out, and I had a feeling it would be the biggest surprise of all. I arrived at Derek's apartment at 7 sharp. James opened the door. He looked nervous, excited, like he was holding on to a secret he couldn't wait to share. "Come in, Mom. Thanks for coming. You said something happened. Are you okay?" "I'm more than okay." He smiled. Actually smiled. The first real smile I'd seen in months. "Sit down. I need to tell you something." I sat on Derek's worn couch. My heart was still racing from that text message, from the mystery of what could possibly be left to happen. James sat across from me, took a breath. "The divorce is final," he said. "As of yesterday." "Oh, James, I'm sorry. Don't be." He shook his head. "It's the best thing that could have happened. I'm free, Mom. For the first time in years I feel free." I studied his face. He meant it. He really did look lighter. Younger somehow. "That's good, honey. That's really good. But that's not what I wanted to tell you." He leaned forward. "I've been in therapy for 6 months now, and I've learned a lot about myself, about my patterns, about why I chose Catherine, about why I let her manipulate me." "What did you learn?" "I learned that I was so afraid of being a mama's boy that I went to the opposite extreme. I completely rejected you instead of just setting normal boundaries. I threw away the one relationship that was actually healthy, because I was trying to prove I didn't need anyone." "James, let me finish." He held up his hand. "I also learned that I chose Catherine because she seemed strong, independent. I thought being with someone controlling meant I was my own man. But really, I was just trading one form of dependence for another." I felt tears starting to form. "I'm proud of you for understanding that. There's more." He paused. "Mom, I want to apologize. Really apologize. Not just for the wedding or the dinner or the way I treated you, but for years of taking you for granted. For assuming you'd always be there no matter how I treated you. You don't have to." "Yes, I do. Because you deserved better. You deserved a son who appreciated what you sacrificed, who recognized what you gave up for him, who treated you with the respect you earned." A tear rolled down my cheek. "And I want to start over," James said. "Not go back to how things were, but build something new, something healthier, where I'm your son but also my own person, where you're my mom but also your own person." "I'd like that," I whispered. "Good. Because I was hoping." He smiled. "Maybe we could have dinner once a week? Not here. Not at your place. Somewhere neutral. A restaurant. Just you and me. Building a new relationship on a new foundation." "I'd love that, James." He reached across and took my hand. "I love you, Mom. And I'm going to spend the rest of my life making sure you know it." 6 months passed. 6 months of weekly dinners at Luigi's Italian restaurant. 6 months of James in therapy working on himself, becoming the man I always knew he could be. He moved into his own apartment, got a promotion at work, made new friends, started running marathons, built the independent life he'd been searching for all along. And something unexpected happened. I changed too. I took up painting. Something I'd always wanted to do but never had time for. I joined a book club with Patricia and 3 other women from the hospital. I went on a vacation to Maine by myself. Just me. Just 7 days of ocean views and lobster rolls and long walks on the beach. And I discovered something incredible. I was more than James's mother. I was Margaret. A woman with dreams. With interests. With a whole life that had nothing to do with my son. One evening at dinner, James noticed. "You're different," he said, studying my face. "You're happy." "I am," I said, surprised by how true it was. "I'm genuinely happy." "Because we're rebuilding our relationship?" he asked hopefully. "No." I smiled gently. "Because of me. Because I finally realized that my happiness doesn't depend on you, on whether you need me or call me or include me in your life. My happiness depends on me." He was quiet for a moment, processing. "That's the greatest gift you could have given me," he finally said. "Showing me that loving someone doesn't mean losing yourself." "Your father would be proud of both of us," I said. "Yeah." James smiled. "He really would be." We finished our meal, talked about his work, My painting class. Normal things. Easy things. And as I drove home that night, I felt something I hadn't felt in years. Peace. Real genuine peace. The kind that comes from knowing you've survived something hard and come out stronger. But just as I pulled into my driveway, my phone rang. Unknown number. I almost didn't answer, but something made me pick up. Hello. Margaret. A woman's voice. Unfamiliar. This is Jennifer Chun. I'm a family law attorney. I'm calling because I represent Catherine Morrison. My stomach dropped. What? Why are you calling me? Because Catherine has filed a lawsuit against you for alienation of affection and intentional interference with marital relations. The world seemed to tilt. What does that mean? It means she's suing you for destroying her marriage. She's asking for $250,000 in damages. I couldn't breathe. After everything. After 6 months of peace. After all the healing. Catherine was coming for me one last time. Ms. Margaret? Are you still there? Yes, I whispered. I'm here. You'll need to hire an attorney. The court date is set for 6 weeks from now. I'm required to send you the official paperwork, but I wanted to give you a heads up. After we hung up, I sat in my car in the darkness. $250,000. Money I didn't have. Money I would never have. Catherine knew that. She knew exactly what she was doing. This wasn't about winning money. This was about revenge. And I had no idea how I was going to fight it. I called James immediately. Catherine is suing me. For $250,000. Silence. Then? What? Alienation of affection. Her lawyer just called. The court date is in 6 weeks. That's insane. She can't do that. Apparently she can. And she is. I heard him take a sharp breath. I'll be right there. 20 minutes later, James was at my door with Derek. They both looked furious. This is my fault, James said, pacing my living room. All of this is my fault. I should have seen who she was. I should have protected you. James, stop. You're not responsible for her choices. But I am responsible for putting you in this position. And I'm going to fix it. How? I don't have money for a lawyer. I don't have $250,000. If she wins, she won't win. Derek spoke up. Because I've been documenting everything. I looked at him. What? I'm a paralegal, remember? When James first told me what Catherine was doing, I started keeping records. Dates. Times. Screenshots of her messages to James. Recordings of phone calls where she admitted to lying about you. My heart started racing. You have evidence? I have everything. And I know a lawyer who specializes in these cases. She owes me a favor. I'll call her tonight. 3 weeks later, I sat in a courtroom. Catherine was on one side with her expensive lawyer. I was on the other side with Derek's friend Maria, who had taken my case pro bono after seeing the evidence. Catherine looked different. Harder. Thinner. Like the last year had been as difficult for her as it had been for me. Her lawyer stood up first. Painted me as a controlling, manipulative mother who had poisoned James against his wife, who had interfered in their marriage from day one, who had made it impossible for Catherine to build a life with her husband. Then Maria stood up, and she destroyed their case piece by piece. She played the recordings Derek had saved. Catherine's voice admitting she had lied about me calling her, admitting she had manipulated James, admitting she wanted me out of the picture. She showed the text messages, the articles Catherine had sent James about toxic mothers, the calculated plan to isolate him. She called Linda as a witness. Linda, who had recovered enough to testify, who told the court exactly what she had discovered about her daughter's manipulation. And then Maria called James. My son walked to the witness stand, looked directly at Catherine, and told the truth. He told the court about the recordings, the lies, the manipulation, how Catherine had systematically turned him against me, how she had manufactured situations to make me look bad. My mother didn't destroy my marriage, James said clearly. Catherine destroyed it herself. By lying. By manipulating. By trying to control every aspect of my life. My mother was the only one who told me the truth. When he finished, Catherine was crying. But not tears of sadness. Tears of rage. The judge didn't even need to deliberate long. Case dismissed, she said firmly. And Mrs. Morrison, I suggest you consider this a lesson. You cannot sue someone for the consequences of your own actions. Outside the courthouse, James hugged me. It's over, Mom. It's really over. Thank you for testifying. I know that was hard. It wasn't hard. It was necessary. He pulled back and looked at me. And Mom? There's something else. What? I've been dating someone. Her name is Sarah. She's a teacher. She's kind. She's independent. She doesn't try to control me or compete with you. And I want you to meet her. I felt tears forming. Good tears. I'd love that. She's waiting in the car actually. I brought her because I wanted her to see this. To see who you are. To understand why you matter so much to me. A young woman got out of the car. She had dark hair and kind eyes. She walked over nervously. Mrs. Margaret? I'm Sarah. James has told me so much about you. All good things, I hope. The best things. She smiled. He says you're the strongest woman he knows. That you taught him what real love looks like. And I can see why. 6 months later, I stood in my kitchen making coffee when I heard a knock. James walked in with Sarah. Both of them smiling. Mom, we have news. I looked at Sarah's hand. The ring. We're engaged, she said excitedly. And we wanted you to be the first to know. And Mom, James added, we want you to give a speech at the wedding. A real one this time. Because none of this happens without you. I hugged them both. And I cried. Happy tears. 2 years later, I held my granddaughter for the first time. Emma. 7 pounds 6 ounces. Perfect. James placed her in my arms with tears in his eyes. Mom, this is Emma. And I want you to know something. I'm going to raise her the way you raised me. With love. With sacrifice. But also with boundaries. With respect. With the understanding that love doesn't mean losing yourself. I looked at this tiny baby. This fresh start. This new beginning. Hello, Emma, I whispered. I'm your grandmother. And I'm going to teach you something important. You deserve to be loved. But love should never make you feel small. Love should never erase who you are. And if someone asks you to disappear to make them comfortable, you walk away. No matter how much it hurts. James put his arm around me. Thank you, Mom. For everything. For not giving up on me. For teaching me what real love looks like. Thank you for coming back, I said. That night, driving home from the hospital, I thought about everything. The wedding that destroyed us. The lies that broke us. The truth that saved us. The healing that rebuilt us. And I realized something. Sometimes the worst thing that happens to you is actually the best thing that could happen. Because it forces you to find your strength. To discover your worth. To learn that love without respect isn't love at all. My son threw me out of his wedding. But in doing so, he gave me the greatest gift. He gave me back myself. Sometimes the people who hurt us the most end up teaching us the most important lessons. Sometimes losing everything is what saves you. And sometimes the hardest thing you'll ever do is walk away from someone you love. But when you do, you might just find that you were never really lost. You were just finding your way home to yourself. If this story touched your heart, you're not alone. Thousands of people face these same struggles every day. And every one of them deserves to know their worth. What would you have done in Margaret's situation? How would you have handled it differently? Drop a comment below and share your thoughts. And if you know someone who needs to hear this story, share it with them. Because sometimes the stories that break our hearts are the ones that heal us. Thank you for watching. And remember, you are worthy of respect, dignity, and love that doesn't ask you to disappear.